Hello, Wellness Warriors. Happy to be here this morning. I want to make sure that everybody, hi, Pat. Nice that you're able to join us this morning. If anybody's here, I have um, a quiz running right now. I'm kind of curious about your answers to this because today we're talking about calories. So I have a quiz running. So as this works, I'm going to do a little presentation and then I'm going to jump into questions. So if you have questions about calories and weight loss and keto and carnivore and all the things, fasting, any questions, we're going to tackle those at the end. I want to say hi to Jeremy. Nice to see you here today. And let's get into this. So, by keeping us focused on calories, companies have tricked us into being fat and sick for multiple generations. Salads with low fat dressings at every meal, gym memberships to burn off those extra calories, and our waistlines continue to get bigger. We're being set up to be heavier and sicker than any other generation before us. Today, I'm going to walk you through the answer because calorie counting is a huge waste of time. And it can. So, anyways, let's just jump right into this. The first thing I want to talk about is the fact that there's this idea of calories in, calories out, that there's a balance that we can have that's going to equal weight loss. And traditionally, we were told that if we took our calories down by 500, then we would lose about a pound. I can't remember if it was a week or a month, whatever the number was. In the end, what would happen is that the average person by the end of, let's say, 6 months, would have lost about 12 to 20 pounds, somewhere in there. But, and this is the big problem with this, is that unless you had only 20-ish pounds to lose, now you're stuck. Why? Because our body will recalibrate the energy that we were using, and it's going to slow down our metabolism, and it's going to keep us healthy, right? It's going to focus on the fact that obviously we don't have enough food. It needs to protect us. The thing that I want you to notice that I said that was really important there was our body's going to recalibrate the energy that came in. I didn't say the calories that came in. And there's a huge reason for that. Our body does not use calories as a currency. It does not understand the idea of calories. So why that's important for every person on the planet to understand. So not just scientists, you and I need to understand that, because when we eat, our body is actually looking for energy in the form of carbohydrates and fats. That's what it's looking for. So if you eat sugar, carbohydrates, two words for the same thing, fats, lipids, two words for the same thing, your bought oil, another word there for fat, your body sees that as energy. And that's important. It's just reality. Your body is not calorie counting. Now, the other thing that we've been advised, informed of, like the information in front of us, is that fat makes us fat, but carbs don't, because fats have 9 calories per gram, whereas carbs only have 4 calories per gram, and protein, if I'm remembering this correctly, has 7. So obviously we need protein to build our bodies. So, and protein is a building block. And so people don't tend to look at protein when look at protein in a bad way. When we're doing this math, they look at protein, but not in a bad way. But when we're talking about actually eating food and trying to lose weight at the same time, we are often encouraged to leave fat heavy things off the plate and put carb heavy things on the plate, because we can eat more and lose weight. The problem is that that's absolutely false information. First, and very importantly, I'm going to remind everybody, Both carbs and fat can make you fat. Both of them. If you overeat anything, you will gain weight. That is just basic. Overeating is overeating. If you overeat protein, you will gain weight. Well, here's a problem. And here's the thing that we are not understanding. We are told that carbohydrates are the preferred energy source of the body. And this supposedly because they have less calories. Again, our body has no clue about calories. Our body understands that if fat comes in, it's an energy source, but it's also a building block. Our body understands that if sugar comes in, it's an energy source and very minimally contributes to any kind of building. But like so as a structural something, it's an energy source mostly. So why is that important? Again, well, when I eat my food and there's something like rice on the plate or something like pasta on the plate, when I make a sandwich and there's bread, when I have those very important rainbow of vegetables on my plate, all of those things are carbohydrates. And because my body sees those as predominantly energy, right? It's carbohydrates, it's energy. Do I need all of that energy right now? And if I don't, my body is going to do the smart thing. And this is why there's, in my opinion, this is why there's such a huge difference between when fat comes in, which is a building block and an energy source, and when carbohydrates come in, which are just an energy source. Well, my body is getting this influx of carbs and it's, well, okay, I'm going to store this for when I need this energy because there's nothing to build right now. Versus when I'm eating protein and its accompanying fat, yes, I still have energy coming in. And so how does my body store energy? How does my body build things? It uses insulin. So we have been informed that insulin is a fat storage hormone, which it is, but it's also a build thing hormone and a take things apart hormone. It's involved in all of those processes, right? It helps us to grow when we're kids. It helps us to build muscle it helps us do a lot of things because it helps us to build, and therefore it can build fat or it can build body parts. So in this case, insulin is helping us to build fat if we have a lot of carbohydrates coming in. So I hope that that's clear. And I really want us to understand that when we put food on our plate, insulin helps us to direct what's happening here, but the actual food we eat is what's helping insulin to direct what's happening. Am I storing stuff because I got this huge amount of energy that came in? Or am I building stuff and repairing stuff, and which our body loves to do, by the way? If you give your body the opportunity to heal something that's not working well in you, it's its top priority. Do I think that fat is the preferred fuel of the body? Even though there seems to be a lean towards our brain getting more ketones, if there are ketones available, I think that different parts of the body use the energy that makes the most sense for that part of the body if it's available. So if we're only eating sugar or high sugar foods, so lots of starchy things, lots of vegetables, if that's what's on our plate, then, and that's overshadowing the fat. And why would that happen? Okay, so I need to explain a bit more. When we eat a lot of carbohydrates and our body, so insulin gets deployed by our body because a lot of energy just came in, it needs to put it somewhere, right? It needs to put that energy away because we don't need all that energy in this moment. We will always use the energy, by the way. At some point, if we give our body the chance, it will go in and pull that energy out and use it because it only makes sense, right? The truth of the matter is, if I have a pantry full of groceries, it doesn't make sense for me to continue to go shopping every day for groceries, bringing in new groceries when I have a pantry and a fridge that are overflowing with groceries. I should use the groceries in my house. When I get low on something, I should go buy more. Our body wants to do that, but we don't give it the chance to do that because carbohydrates push more insulin to be deployed than fats. That pushes the least amount of insulin to be deployed, and protein pushes a moderate amount of insulin to be deployed. And one of the interesting things is that when you eat protein, usually fat comes along with it. So that's going to be a nice mix of fat and protein. You're going to get an average amount of insulin, which would then allow your body to use that incoming protein and fat if it needs to be repair something. And it will store what needs to be stored because, again, if there's too much that comes in, it'll be stored. Now, if my body is doing well and there's not a lot of repairs to happen, the other thing that we'll notice is that we're not as hungry. We're not ravenous. So this idea that I need to eat salad to be thin, that I have to be so careful with what I put on my plate, and that which just goes back to that idea of why they were so trying to scare us away from fat and all those calories that are coming along with fat. And do we even understand how they were measuring those calories? They were burning food, like setting stuff on fire to understand how much calories is in a food that has fat versus how much calories is in a food that has more carbohydrate, how much calories is in protein. What we really need to focus our attention on is that our bodies are not furnaces. We do not burn energy like that. We do chemical processes, and because of those chemical processes, our body is able to extract energy from the food we eat and use it to do all kinds of things. And what's really cool is our body can do these chemical reactions and produce heat, but they're chemical reactions. So if you've ever seen, for example, resin, like when people mix resin together and then it will actually get hot. And you might have done this even at home if you like mixed those two-part epoxies to, stick things back together. It actually heats up. So I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but that's a chemical reaction producing heat. And I feel like that's more similar to what our body does than setting something on fire. And of course, those chemical reactions can lead to fires. That's happened as well. But I think when it comes to our body, we don't see that story. We don't combust like that because of taking in chemicals. So again, at least not that I know of anyways, I don't know if there's any chemicals we can make, if we take it in, can make us combust. That would be interesting. That would be scary, is what it would be if that was a thing that could happen. But I want you guys to think about this whole idea of carb spiking a little differently as well, because depending on what kind of lifestyle you're doing, you're taking in more or less carbohydrate. And our body is supposed to use more insulin when carbohydrates come in. The problem that we live today is that we're not traditionally supposed to be eating this much carb. I want us to think about the fact that in our history, before we became so technology savvy and figured out ways to just have food on hand 24/7 all the time, what would have really been happening is that at certain seasons of the year, we would have had some carbohydrate that we figured out was healthy, not poisonous to us to eat. And if we weren't able to catch an animal, we would eat that. But again, pay attention to my wording. If we weren't able to catch an animal, we would eat the vegetation. It wasn't instead of eating the animal, we would eat the vegetation. That or thing happened much later in the history of us being on this planet, where we start to see that plants are part of the meal and not a thing we do in desperation when we're hungry. And because of that, our body is now dealing with a lot more carbohydrate than it would have been needing to deal with. So, the example I could give you is I think most of us could see that our weight would be totally fine if we only ever had birthday cake on our own birthday. Our weight would be totally fine compared to having cake every other day. If we have cake every other day, which is what we do, by the way, because we eat bread, some of us have it every day, and we eat cookies, and we eat granola bars, and all of those things are made with the same stuff that cake is made with. So we're on a daily basis having some kind of fun. So if we're doing that, of course, we're going to have a harder time maintaining our weight because we've been overeating carbohydrates regularly. So our body is not able to manage our weight. If we go back to eating carbohydrates the way that is natural to us, we wouldn't be having them on every single meal, that's for sure. Would we even be having them at all with the way that we've progressed in our society? With all the gadgets, we have fridges now, we have freezers even. Would we need to eat any carbohydrate? These are huge question marks, but it's why there's a carnivore community, because a lot of people have realized we don't need them. So your weight is going to be dependent on whether you're overeating or not. Now, I've thrown out a few words here. I've talked about keto lifestyle. I've talked about carnivore lifestyle. I've thrown out the word insulin. So let's talk about how these three ideas, I'm going to throw low carb in there, how these ideas come together and what they actually mean. So, since insulin is the hormone that's directing what's going to happen in terms of growth of the body, am I growing muscle and healthy tissue and bones and repairing stuff that needs to be repaired, or am I growing fat tissue? That could be subcutaneous, that could be visceral, right? Am I growing those kind of tissues? What's my body growing? And it's insulin that's going to tell my body what it needs to be growing right now based on what I'm eating. A low carb lifestyle is when you eat 120-ish grams of carbs per day or less. And we have calculators, again, technology, that we can put the foods in with the weight of the food that we've eaten. Don't do it by cups, because the way that you chop something up and the way that I chop something up is going to be different. Different sizes will equal different amounts in the cup. Do it by weight, and that way you know how much you've actually eaten. And so, you're going to use your calculator to figure out, am I at 120 or less? And if you are, you're in a low carb scenario, and that way of eating can absolutely help regulate your insulin if your insulin resistance is not too bad. Now, how do you know if you have insulin resistance? You have insulin resistance if you have inflammation problems like what I had. I had those from the time I was 23. You have insulin resistance if you're overweight. I was overweight starting in my late 30s. Well, yeah, for sure. After I had my daughter, I was in that overweight category, maybe a few times under that age, but I was able to get it back to normal weight. You have insulin resistance if you have any kind of metabolic issue that's causing skin problems, or basically, if your insulin is higher than it should be, you have the beginnings of insulin resistance. Here's the problem. Most people have some level of insulin resistance because most people are eating carbohydrate daily and are eating it in large amounts daily. So, because most people are not anywhere near keeping their carbohydrates under 120 per day, which that seems like a lot of carbohydrate, right? That's a lot of sugar. Let's put it like that. But when you start doing the math of like how much sugar is in a cookie, how much sugar is in a chocolate bar, how much sugar is in a plate of rice, it's a little bit scary when you start to realize that the plate of rice is more than the cookie. Because we wouldn't think that. It's scary when you start to realize that some salads are more than the cookie. Now, of course, you have more than one cookie, and the cookie wouldn't be the only thing you eat for the day. So if you could have a plate of rice with some meat and that's the only thing you eat for the day, that's possible. It's not typical, but it's possible. And a lot of the times when we eat spaghetti, again, there's a lot of carbohydrate there. So since most people have more than one meal per day, this is where we start to get in trouble. If you're just having one meal, sure, that could probably work. If you're having two meals, it probably could still work. But if you're having the 3 meals and snacks and all the things, usually we're well past the 120. The next level would be a keto lifestyle. So a keto lifestyle is a low carb lifestyle because you're eating less than 120 grams of carbs. In a keto lifestyle, you're eating 20 grams of carbs or less. Now, theoretically, it could be 50, but doctors have repeatedly pointed out that you are not likely going to get your body into a healthy state doing 50 if you already have insulin resistance. Again, since most of us are coming to this from a place, yeah, we're probably going to need to be at 20. I want to point this out though. On a low carb lifestyle, 120 or less, you're going to lose weight. On a keto lifestyle at 50 or less, you're going to lose weight. Will you be able to keep the weight off? That's a question mark when we're at the higher end of the numbers. The reason for this is, again, if my body's insulin resistant, the reason I initially lose weight is because there's less energy coming in. Well, maybe. If you do it right, there should be about the same amount of energy coming in initially. But eventually there's going to be a little bit less energy coming in because I'm not spiking my insulin. So when I do keto, or even if I do low carb, let's start there. I'm bringing my carbohydrates down. I'm still bringing enough carbohydrates that, yes, my insulin levels are high, but I'm losing weight because there's less energy coming in. When I get to those keto numbers now, so let's say 50, my insulin levels are starting to be normal-ish, but they're still high because I'm still insulin resistant. And so part of the reason I think some people stall, and again, not a doctor, I'm just giving you my ideas of what I see, is because 50 grams of carbs, 40 grams of carbs, for me, even 20 grams of carbs was still enough that my insulin resistance was acting up. How do I know? My inflammation was acting up. So I'm one of the lucky people, and I say that I'm lucky to have Violet syndrome. My insulin resistance was pain. It wasn't the weight that was, although that was happening, that was bothering me. My insulin resistance caused physical pain. It caused me to be inflamed. And so I started to realize that even though I was at 20 grams, according to the measurements and all the things that I was trying so hard to get right, I was still feeling the physical pain. So it went away and it came back. But when I dropped down to 18, it went away again. And it helped me to understand something. It's not because I lost weight, because when the pain came back, my weight was fine. I was at this weight that I'm still at today. It's not because I lost weight that my insulin resistant state was solved. So my body was still over producing insulin when I ate carbohydrates. That was really important for me to learn. because it helped me then to be careful to keep myself under 18 at all times. And to make sure that I did that, I just dropped myself down to 10. That was just safer. If I only put 10 grams of carbs on my plate in a day, I really just didn't believe I could harm myself. And I didn't think, well, I was betting on it wasn't less than 10. So this is what I've learned about from talking to other people who are carnivore. The reason that they went carnivore is that their number was less than 18, 7. Like they were dropping, and just eventually said, you know what? My number is 0, because even with a little bit, once in a blue moon, they were still feeling something. And a lot of the people that I spoke to, it was pain situations. It was either joint or intestinal or something that was happening, but it wasn't weight. So this is the other thing that I think helps people to be stalled, is that because it's weight and we're so used to being overweight, we allow ourselves to keep fighting the insulin resistance because we allow ourselves to keep putting carbohydrates on our plate when maybe there shouldn't be carbohydrates on our plate. Maybe we're one of those people that the reason we didn't achieve our goal weight is because we're that insulin resistant, that even this small amount of carb is just keeping our insulin levels higher. And so basically we're still storing that little bit of fat when we eat, which is keeping us stable, is a question mark that I have. Right. And this is something that I think that it would be cool if there was a way to measure, or like, is there a way to really verify if that's happening? My guess is that if you're wearing a continuous glucose monitor and a continuous ketone monitor, you might be able to verify this kind of information. So I would encourage that. But what we do know is that eating low carb, keto, or carnivore is the way to help keep your insulin levels low. And when I say low, I mean normal. Normal. We're trying to get them back to normal. And this is the other thing, right? Because we want them to rise when they're supposed to rise, because when we eat fat, we have an insulin rise. When we eat protein, we have an insulin rise. And when we eat carbohydrate, we have that insulin, what we call a spike, because it's just so high. But at the same time, it's supposed to be. That's what our body is supposed to do. And if you were eating carbohydrates in a normal way, the rise would happen. The sugar, the extra carbs would get put away. You would go on with your day, and eventually, if not today, tomorrow, next week, at some point your body would just use that energy that it put away because I didn't need it right now. But obviously, as you live life, it would use it. The same way that as you live your day, you run down to the freezer and you pull up whatever you're going to pull from the freezer to cook tomorrow, the next day, right? Like, it's just normal to do. So weight loss is going to happen if you do any of the diets. And for you to figure out which diet is best for you, it really is going to come down to what you believe your level of insulin sensitivity is right now. So you could theoretically just start with low carb and see what happens. But I will, and today I wanted to just talk about the calorie idea, because the calorie idea does not work for us because we are not combustion anythings. However, another reason that the calorie idea is hard, and the reason that low carb might be harder for some people to maintain, is the way I'm going to word that, is because it doesn't at all address the chasing that we do. Neither does the calorie idea, by the way. Like, none of this addresses the fact that the reason that we struggle to eat healthy all the time isn't because of calories. It's because of the way that we've been eating sugar has caused us to be addicted to sugar. And so now we chase sugar rather than even possibly eating it in a healthy way, the way that our ancestors would have. Oh, there's no meat. I'm going to eat some vegetables or some whatever to get me through until I catch something. We don't do that. We eat carbohydrate things like cookies and ice cream and candy and chocolate for fun. We make meals with side dishes of rice and pasta and vegetables for fun. So even when we're fueling and building ourselves, supposedly with a meal, we're putting things on the plate that are for fun, right? Like the reason that we created lasagna was to make it fun. The reason we created pizza was to make eating fun. We think that we need our meals to be fun for our kids to eat them, right? If we make a healthy meal, oh, the kid's not going to eat that. Yeah. Back in the day when there wasn't like mac and cheese, back in the day when there wasn't pizza, back in the day when there wasn't hot dogs, the kid ate what you put in front of them because it tasted like food, and food tastes good. Like, do we even understand that food tastes good? If we were to put ourselves, like, take yourself from whatever country you're in and put yourself in a country that is completely opposite in the way of eating. So for me, that would be like maybe China. Um, the flavor profile in China versus the Caribbean, totally different. But if that's where I was born, I would think that was food. I would love that as food. If someone in China was born in the Caribbean, they would look at that as food. They would love that. Like, just switch countries with any. If you're in North America, put yourself somewhere in South America. If you're in South America, put yourself in. It doesn't matter. You would see that as food. You would if you were eating what the Eskimos eat, you'd be like, "Yep, this is food." We need to put down this idea that food should be fun because it's making us fat. It's ruining our bodies. It's it's destroying everything. And I'll get questions like, why can some people eat carbs and be thin and I am gaining weight? Well, I swear you don't understand how lucky you are if you gain weight first. Take that as the sign that you are insulin resistant and change your diet. Because if you are not gaining weight, can we just remember that insulin is a toxin? And so now the new question is, what is my body doing with those toxins? What is my body doing with them? We want to be thin eating the food that's bad for us. And we don't realize that those people that were thin. So let's go back to when I was at my correct weight, but eating a bunch of garbage. Well, what was wrong with me? I had joint pain. At 23 years old, my pains and the limping that I was doing because my joints were constantly inflamed. It started with knees, then it was elbow, then it was back, eventually neck, and then finally my hip that put me over the edge where I couldn't walk. You know what? I would have traded being fat. I would have. And guess what? I got to be fat anyways. And in the grand scheme of things, of being both, yes, I can still sit here today and say I would have rather been fat that whole time and not had the pain. The pain was ridiculous. The pain stopped me from living life. The pain actually stopped me from doing things. So, Wellness Warrior, don't be jealous of people. And by the way, so what if I don't have pain and I don't have weight? The sugar is doing something. Can we understand that overeating garbage is damaging our internals and the sugar is doing something? So don't be jealous of people. because you don't know what they're actually going to either living or end up living. Because I wasn't walking around looking like I was in pain all the time. I was in pain all the time, but I wasn't, because you learn to hide it. You learn to hide it. But there was a good number of people that invited me to do a good number of things that I turned down because I could just look at that activity and go, yeah, that's going to feel horrible while I'm doing it. And then it's going to be days of recovery. So the reason that some people can eat garbage and be thin is because their body is doing other things with it. And trust me, it doesn't mean that the other things, like the skin issues that we see a lot of people with the eczema and psoriasis and all the it doesn't mean that the other thing is better than weight. And by the way, a lot of the times those people still at some part in life end up gaining weight anyway. It just takes longer. Another piece of this puzzle, by the way, if we're talking about like what it is, what diet we should be doing, and like what we're trying to accomplish, how often you eat garbage in your history is going to determine whether or not. So, how often you ate garbage in your history is going to determine whether or not you need to do low carb, keto, carnivore. Because, like, if I was a vegan, for example, in part of my life history, then my body was being assaulted so much and didn't have the building blocks to even try to fix itself because I wasn't eating any animal protein. And animal protein is the most complete and whole protein that your body uses to repair you. And it has the right fats and it has the right minerals and right. So if that was my story, I'm going to probably need to go the complete opposite and be carnivore to solve versus, like if you're old school Caribbean where you were eating vegetables and rice and not much junk food, you're probably going to be able to do low carb and just like scale back like the kind of veg, but like you could do low carb, still have some rice, and be perfectly fine for a good portion of your existence. And as long as you keep the carbohydrates under 125, you might actually be able to not be diabetic. Happy days. But then we have the people that are going to be in between there. Like they're eating, they might be eating some junk food, but not all the time. The more processed junk food you add, the more chances that you're going to need to have keto carnivore numbers. So what I'm trying to say is, if you've never been vegan, let's take that off the table. If you're maybe a vegetarian, but you were still eating eggs, or, maybe you were pescatarian, or maybe you just like didn't eat a lot of meat, but you ate it. If you're in that camp, but you had a lot of processed foods, you're still likely very insulin resistant. Your insulin is higher than it should be for what your body would want. And all of this is for what your body would want. If I was eating the ideal way, how much insulin would my body need to manage some incoming vegetables, right? An incoming piece of fruit once in a blue moon. Again, I wouldn't be eating birthday cake every day because it's not my birthday every day, right? So once in a blue moon, how much insulin would my body need? And I think when we start looking at those ideas, we start to really have a good understanding of why we're struggling to lose weight. And if we take the packaged foods out, we're solving so much, like almost immediately. And then if you want your body to react properly, what you need to do is understand what your body wants. And your body wants some very basic things. So here we go. Your body is expecting you to eat food. Food is animal protein with its accompanying fat. In that scenario, my body is getting the building blocks it needs, and my body is getting the energy to help it build itself, right? Because your body can totally use fat to create all the energy that your body will need to do all the processes. So when I say that, what I'm saying is the incoming protein and fat allows your body to make everything, including the sugar that your body needs. So you're good. If we understand that second piece of the puzzle, that your body makes all the sugar that you need, means I don't need to eat any, means our ancestors, those going back in that way back machine who were eating just meat, knew what they were doing. If we just look at that piece of the puzzle, how well are we going to do? Now, if you eat carbs, your body will create fat on your body because insulin will rise because carbs came in, and some of that is going to get put away as fat. That's just the way this is going to work. And we need to accept that as part of this process. So if I choose to eat carbohydrates, I am allowing myself to put away some fat. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to gain weight if I'm doing, let's say I'm doing the right kind of low carb for me, which could be low carb, could be keto. So I'm eating some carb is what I'm saying, but I'm not overdoing it. What's going to happen is your body's going to take it in. It's going to make some fat. You're going to live your day. And over the next few days, your body's going to use some of that fat that it put away because you're eating protein those other days. That's what I'm trying to get you to understand. And you're going to notice that when I say, if you're eating veg of any kind, I say keto. I want to just point this out. I see a lot of people say, I do carnivore, but I sometimes eat fruit. Then you're keto. The definition of keto is you eat like 20 grams of carbs or less. So it's the or less that people keep trying to leave off the conversation. And there's nothing wrong with being keto. I don't understand why people feel that they need to say they're carnivore if they're not. If you're not carnivore, you're not carnivore. It's fine. If you eat veg once a week, that's fine. Now, if you're telling me you eat veg like once a year, okay, I understand why you're saying you're carnivore. If you're telling me you eat it once every 4 months even, I can understand why you're saying you're carnivore. But if you're having veg as part of your meal plan, which would mean that in a 2-week period, you're having some kind of vegetation, that's keto. Because we tend to, I look at it like that. I plan my meal plan over a 2-week span, right? Because I'm trying to get what's the variation in the things that I eat. So if in that 2 weeks I had some veg, I'm keto. Why are we stressing that point? I don't understand. There's nothing wrong with being keto, but it's keto. Okay. I just wanted to say that because it's 20 grams of carbs or less. Now, if I end up falling into that carnivore space, then my insulin rises are going to be around protein and fat, which is terrific because your body doesn't care about calories. It cares about protein, fat, and carbohydrates. The actions of insulin are reacting to protein, fats, and carbohydrates, not calorie count. If I take in a certain amount of calories, quote unquote, of carbohydrates, and I match it to the amount of calories from fat that I take in, my body reacts very differently. We just need to accept that that's the truth. So since your body cares about the amount of sugar that you're eating, you're going to check out the video that I'm linking next, where I go over more details about how much sugar is too much. So it's in the description for people watching this live, and it's linked on the screen. And now we're going to, did I switch? Now we're going to talk to, here we go. Wellness Warriors, I'm so happy to see that there are people here. I see there's some comments that came in while I was talking. So let's go back and find those comments. And I first want to say, let's see. Jeremy says, I want some bread so bad. Jeremy, I can understand that. I think that what ends up happening to us is we're so focused on what we can't have that we end up thinking about it, even though everything else in our life has started to improve because we were focusing on what's good for us. And what I want you to do, and I hope that you're able to think about it this way, rather than saying, I can't have bread. I'm sure you've had bread before. When you had it, how did you feel? Well, how did your body react to bread, to crackers, to right? And for a lot of us, the way that our body reacts is by storing fat. And so we're getting the opposite of what we want and making us feel bad. And it could happen, Jeremy, that if you have this idea and it sticks with you for too long, you might end up eating some bread. If that happens to you, which I hope it doesn't, but if it does, pay attention to how you end up feeling. I'm going to guess that if it happened to you, like what happened to me when I had nuts, I ended up beating myself up so much in my head, it wasn't even worth the taste of the nuts when I ate them. And that's a lot of what happens. And I think that it took me a while to figure out that that's what was going to happen, that it's not worth it. But I had to fall down a few times before I could really see that the truth is it wasn't worth it. Hello, Maggie, the substitute teacher. Thank you for the super chat. And you said you're new here and really enjoying your content. And if you have a question later, I would love to answer your question. But I appreciate you letting me know that you enjoyed the content. And of course, all contributions are appreciated. Down in the description, Wellness Warriors, I have ways that we can contribute because obviously it helps me be able to make more stuff because it allows me to free up time. So I absolutely appreciate this, Maggie, and it's going to contribute to things for sure. Good morning, Pam. Nice to see you in the chat today. And I don't see any QQQ, so I'm just going to go through the video, the comments that I have. But if you have questions, love to answer them. Stuart, I still sometimes keep an approximate calorie count, just an old, hard to break habit. Okay, so I mean, I definitely think that it's an exercise that I'm not sure what it's giving us. And I know it's not giving our body anything. My concern is it gives our brain a problem. So I didn't say this earlier, but I also feel like when people see a high calorie number on their meal, they feel guilty about eating it, even if it was a healthy meal. And my concern is it's going to allow us to still be in that place where companies can fool us into saying, hey, but this is low calorie, and we would touch that idea. So I'm so happy that I was never really that much into calorie counting to begin with, like even in my normal diet. But yeah, I think when we understand that our body just doesn't care, it's like, why are you bothering? It's like when you thought your kids liked a certain color and you would go out of your way to get them a certain color. And then that one time you're like, oh, I'm sorry, they only had this. And you say the color and they're like, yeah, I like this color. And you're like, realize you've been torturing yourself and going out of your way and driving yourself crazy to do something that you didn't need to be doing. And I feel like that's what we're doing for our bodies sometimes. And congratulations on losing 100 on the Lion diet. I've heard of that. I think it's when you only eat ruminants, if I remember correctly. I mean, again, to me, it's carnivore with a different name, so I think it's cool. So S Amato says, don't need the calorie count with carnivore. Perfection. Let's see, joining from San Francisco. Appreciate your caring and point of view. I appreciate you, S. Amato. Thank you very much. And Ian is coming to us from Canada. Hello, gradual legends. Lost 50 pounds last year without counting a calorie. I was just watching my carb intake and kept it low. which is exactly what we need to do. And Laura is saying that you should pay attention more to quality of nutrition than calories. Ribeyes have a ton of calories and are nutritious. That's a great example of how a food that's super nutritious is high in calories, quote unquote, if you were to, yeah, throw that in the pan and just let it burn to death. But it's the most healthy thing that we can eat, and the body doesn't is going to get what it needs out of it, and it's going to love you for that. So that's amazing. And Gerojo Legend says ribeye and eggs is a perfect couple. Love that. Okay, so I don't know what the Scarsdale diet is, but it made me very aware of the negative effects of sugar and carbs on me. So I'm not sure what the Scarsdale diet is, but if it helps you to figure something out, then I think that there's no such thing as a fail if we learn from it. So if you don't learn from it, yes, total fail. Like it wasn't worth it for you to do that. But if you learn from something and it helps you to do something better next time, that's perfection. So low carb was so difficult for me when I was started. I never knew how much I was on full addiction to bread and pasta. Yeah, I definitely think that bread is a tricky one. So I'll give you a story. I remember when I was a young child, I would probably say I was in the 10-ish range. If I went to the kitchen looking for cookies and there weren't any, because often my parents were not big on buying junk food, which I'm so happy about today, because what could my life have looked like? But once in a while there'd be cookies. And so sometimes I would go looking, and if there was no cookies, do you know what I would do? I would get bread and I would just pop it in the toaster. Sometimes I'd put butter on it, but sometimes not. And what I love to do was take a freshly toasted piece of bread and, like, take off the crust and peel it open. And I would eat that. And the funny thing to me is, like, yes, you're kind of playing with it, making it kind of fun for the 10-year-old. But the flip side of the coin is, why did I even think to eat that? It was because obviously there was still a way of getting carbs into me, right? And so there's a lot of things that we don't think about, and a lot of things that we don't see as bad to do. Like, my parents didn't care that I was doing that. It's bread, whatever, eat it. Like, they didn't care that I was having a piece of bread. But now looking back on that, like, one slice of bread is like 10 to 15 grams of carb, if I remember correctly. So it's like, yeah, like, it was just a bad thing to be doing that I didn't know was so bad. Um, Hello, Joe. How are you doing? Nice. Thank you for being here. Megan, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here and I appreciate you commenting. So Shova Malaka, I hope I said that right. I just told my husband this diet is so boring and I'm so tired of eating meat. I'm almost at a point I'd rather just not eat because the smell of the meat makes me nauseous. I need fun. So Shova, Shava? Actually, what I'm going to say is, when we start this diet, so if we're talking about carnivore, I'm assuming, because you're only eating meat, I feel like when you start carnivore, especially if you go straight from normal standard food to carnivore, I can understand why it might seem boring, because your taste buds haven't adjusted to eating meat every day and only having meat. You're still used to, like, these fun side dishes, but those fun side dishes were contributing to your poor health. So a lot of this is figuring out what matters more to you. Does it matter more to you to have fun with your food, but knowing that I'm setting myself up to be sick in my future? Or does it matter more to me to get my health under control and then find places to have fun? So, for example, go out more with your friends, do more activities as a family or with your spouse, or on your own, go find activities to do. So again, going back to what I just said, like, as a kid, I'm going to the kitchen to look for cookies or bread. Why? Well, because at that point in time, I wasn't able to go out and see friends yet, whether for whatever reason, whether it was because it was a school night and I couldn't leave the house on that night, or whether it's because it was like too late at night and so all my friends had to be home. But again, we need to understand that we have been entertaining ourselves with food, which is a huge trap, by the way, right? That's how they keep us trapped, because we're just going to keep purchasing and purchasing and purchasing things that are harming our body, when we really should be entertaining ourselves with the activities, having entertaining situations with people, and having hobbies. So Garuda Legend says they're from the Caribbean. Hey, cool. I had to scale back rice, beans, bread, and high sugar fruit. I really only eat it when my family tries to feed me. Okay. But even in the Caribbean, I would imagine that there's certain times of year where some fruits are just not there. Now, I don't know if they so if there's not one, is there a one to replace it? And is that a continual thing where it's like, oh, we don't have this, but now we have that and we can flip around? So because I'm in Canada right now, and I grew up in Canada, even though that my family is from the Caribbean. So a lot of the foods on my dinner plates and my lunch plates and my breakfast plates were quite Caribbean, but the fruits and vegetables are whatever we can get in the grocery store, right? So it's a question mark. So let's see. You gave me some more information. Try a hyper carnivore diet. It's 70% meat and the rest is vegetation. So that's keto. Yeah. So that's keto. So I'm not really sure. Again, these are points that I get confusing. If I'm eating vegetation, then that's keto. So I just wish we could be clear, because I feel like when we say these things, it confuses people, and then every moment of confusion is an opportunity for someone to make a mistake, because most people that are doing carnivore drop tracking. There's no need to track because I'm doing carnivore. And if I say to somebody, well, do hyper carnivore, which is like 70% meat and 30% vegetation. So now, am I tracking? Because 70% meat, 30% vegetation could still allow somebody to put more veg on their plate than their body could manage, because you could still be over 20 grams of carbs there. So these are question marks. And these are things that I feel like we need to be really, really careful of how we describe things, just because I want people to make decisions and I want them to do things based on what they're actually wanting to accomplish. And if what I'm trying to accomplish is eating the right way, right? If that's what I'm trying to do, then yeah, okay. I've said what I want to say. Eggs, sardines, and lamb chops are fun. Add more animal-based foods. They are fun too. Bison burgers on cloud bread is delicious. Cloud bread is that egg bread, right? Yeah. I'm trying to see. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit to see if I have any questions. Okay. Let's see. I love to make lamb steak with sunny side up eggs. There's a lot of great foods here. Salsa, black olives, garlic, Roma. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting foods here. I feel like for anyone who's not sure what to eat, my go-to advice for everybody is start by what was your normal diet, and just start taking carbohydrates off the plate. And I feel like the meats that you were eating before are likely either okay how they are, or with some tweaks can be okay. But even if I took all the veg off my plate and had some kind of stew that I was having as the meat, and I started just with that, I'm probably going to be like miles ahead of where I was if I still had the rice or the pasta or the potatoes or the whatever that was beside it. right? And I'm saying that knowing that in the Caribbean, a lot of the time the stews have potatoes and carrots and stuff in there. So sometimes it's, how do I do this in a way that I'm I know I'm going to stick to it? Because if I don't think I'm going to stick to it, there's no way that I'm going to be able to be successful long term, right? So going back to you, Shava, and in your comment is that if you're just disliking these meals that much that you can't maintain this diet, then yeah, you're not going to maintain the diet. And what's the point of that? So I'm going to do it. I'm going to lose some weight. I'm going to get off of it. I'm going to gain the weight back. I'm going to do it again. And now I'm yo-yo dieting. Yo-yo dieting, first of all, not healthy for the body. But second of all, every time we yo-yo out, it's harder to get back in. And I've seen this over and over and over. When people jump out of keto or carnivore and then try to get back in, it is such a struggle. And I have to say that even on my mess up where I was eating those nuts and kicked myself out of ketosis, obviously, because I was eating more than my body could manage and I was inflamed again, getting back in was hard. And but it again solidified for me, right? Like, this is not an answer. Why am I doing this? I'm harming myself actually by doing this. And that was the end of me eating nuts. I out, no more. So I think that we need to be honest with ourselves. I think that we need to be really, really aware of the foods that help us and the foods that are just causing us to struggle. So Hazel says, my issue is rice. How do you get started on keto? Um, Years go on a weight loss program, but didn't quite get it. Well, I'll be honest. Rice is a hard one on a keto diet, but it's doable. What you need to do is actually weigh out how much rice you can have and don't go past that amount. Now, it's not going to be a lot. It's going to be quite a small amount, and it's probably not going to be a very satisfying meal. And I feel like, though, if you stick to that amount, you're going to have two options. You'll either get used to that being the amount of rice you eat now, and so therefore it's fine. And by the way, you need to cook the rice and then like weigh out. So either you're cooking the amount that you know is only for yourself, and so you're going to, but if you're sharing with other people, you need to weigh the amount you actually eat and to figure out how much carb is in the amount that you actually eat. So, but once you get that number, which is for your total day, needs to be under 20. So if you're going to have rice in your meal, whichever meal that is, it probably means the other meals are having no veg at all. So that's what becomes tricky about rice. And part of the reason that I was kind of happy with myself that I figured out how to do, like, so you could do cauliflower rice, which Pat makes for the kids, and they actually like that. And it's a nice substitute. But I didn't know about cauliflower rice when I started, and Pat and the kids, well, Pat only started doing keto like much after me. So he was the one that figured out the cauliflower thing. What I found was really cool was I was just taking a blender, or sorry, a food processor, not a blender, a food processor. And I was like food processing cabbage and broccoli. It was mostly cabbage and broccoli, but I would put other veg in there too. Maybe sometimes I would put some leafy vegetables. Like, it doesn't really matter. The point was that the cabbage and broccoli, when you cook this, I would stir fry it, kind of had a consistency, and the sizes were small enough that it felt like I was eating rice. And that's what I did at the beginning. So, because again, at the very beginning, like, there's this idea that I need a side dish. I today understand I don't need a side dish, but if I want a side dish, eggs make a beautiful side dish, as I agree with gradual legends. So like I'd often have eggs on the side, which also helps me to get my eggs in, because I feel like eggs are healthy, and I wasn't giving enough attention to them. Now I might be giving too much attention to them after talking to Dr. Georgia Eid, but I'm going to figure that out and I'll let you know if I change my mind on it. But for right now, I'm eating eggs and I'm quite liking having them as a side dish. I hope that helps, Hazel. Hello, Uncle Big Guy. Let's see. Living low carb is good. Living low carb is so good when you actually know what it is and what it is not low carb. I keep it to low carb. So I definitely believe that understanding what your body needs is the ultimate of ultimate. Like I said, my frustration with changing the name of things or like trying to add extra names in is the confusion it brings. So when I started keto, I understood there was low carb, there was keto, because of the medical state change that happens at that keto level. And then there's carnivore, which I saw as different because, now I'm not eating any vegetation. Now, whether you call it carnivore, lion, like to me, those are the same. Anything that's denoting you're not eating vegetation, to me, goes there. And keto is that middle ground where it's like you're in a state that is ketogenic. Ketogenic means that my body is using ketones as one of its fuel sources. Your body always uses carbohydrates. There's no scenario where you're only using ketones. It doesn't exist. And many doctors have pointed that out. Bickman, I forget his name now. Very, very smart dude. Oh, wow, I'm forgetting his name. I'm sorry. But Bickman is the one that came to my head first, and now this other name is not coming to me. But many doctors have pointed out that you're always using both. Even Nadal. Oh, wow. All my doctors are dropping for me today. Their names are not easy to. Ali Nadir or Nadir, I can't remember, but they're not all easy names to pronounce. That's why I'm having a little bit of trouble with these other doctors. But at the end of the day, if I understand that my body always uses both, so even when I'm sugar focused, there's still ketones in there too, by the way. Like you're always using both, but you want more access to those ketones and you want the sugar to be used rather than just being put in storage all the time. When we understand what our body's actually trying to do, it just doesn't make sense. Like can you imagine when you first buy a house, right? Of course, it's lovely if people hear, hey, Violet bought a house. My parents bought me a grill, right, for outside because probably she doesn't have a grill. They bought me a grill, right? My aunt bought me a set for the patio, right? I had somebody that gave me a nice lamp, right? Like people gave me things that they thought would fall in line with my style. Actually, the lamp, they actually asked me, do you like this? And then they bought it for me. Like people gave me stuff, but can you imagine, like I've owned this house now for over 10, can you imagine if people were still just dropping things off? Hey, Violet, you have a house? Here's an extra TV. Here's an extra commode. Here's an extra chair. Can you imagine what my house would look like? Like there wouldn't be place for all of that. There's a time and a place for an influx of carbohydrates. Like I couldn't find any food and I need some energy that's going to last. So I eat this high sugar stuff. My body uses some for energy and puts some away. And then over the next few days, if I don't catch anything, I've got energy. Perfection. That works. But can you imagine if just out of nowhere, your body was constantly getting, and that's what we're doing, by the way, Wellness Warrior. We are constantly bringing in this extra on top of that your body doesn't need, that your body cannot use that quickly. So that's the reason that I want us to really understand what we're trying to accomplish. I'm hoping that that's clear. So thank you. I came from a plant-based background, so I miss my fruit and the most. But thank you for clearing up my issue with fun. Yeah, I'm happy to be helpful. I definitely think that if you come from a plant-based, especially if you were vegetarian and had all those years of just sweet, fun tasting things, and on vegetarian, there's nothing that says that we can't have processed foods either. So there's so much for us to indulge in that when we try to eat healthy, even coming from standard diet, because that was where I came from, all the healthy stuff, like I was not used to eating vegetables, just like true transparency. In my standard diet, um, potatoes in the form of French fries was my vegetable of choice. And then sometimes I would have carrots. Yeah. And a salad once in a blue moon. So it's not like I was coming from the healthiest place. Food on my plate was there for fun. And that's why I understand this. And that's why I'm trying to help everybody to understand that it's not helping us to do this to ourselves, because what we end up doing is we end up chasing. That's what we end up doing. And if you are chasing garbage all the time, your body is going to be fighting against what's happening all the time, and it's so damaged it can't repair itself because the sugar just keeps coming in. So the toxins, and we're just talking about sugar toxin right now. We haven't touched the other toxins that are in fruits and vegetables, the anti-nutrients, and that's a video for another day. That's why I'm not talking about it today. But I want every wellness warrior to do better in life. That's the goal that I have for you guys, is that we do better in life. That's why I make these videos. I want you to be the healthiest that you possibly can be. And I want to know in this live stream, what was helpful? Was there something I need to clarify better? I want your feedback. So I noticed there's no more questions, so I'm going to end this here, but I want your feedback. Let me know in the comments of the video if there's anything that I could have been more clear about. I could have explained better, because these videos are for you. Ways to support the channel in the description. Check it out if you would like to contribute. I have some video ideas coming up that I really want to make time for, so that would help me. Talk to you guys again next week. Have a great rest of your day, Wellness Warriors. Go eat some meat.